So I guess the first thing I'm just wondering is if you can, you gave this big, great lecture tonight. If you can maybe summarize a key point for me that people should have been taking away tonight.
Okay, in 20 words or less. I think that the main thing, what I was trying to figure out is, have we come out of the tunnel? Have things turned for the better since Obama became president? Because it felt pretty miserable for a while there. And the answer is maybe. You can't, it's only a year. It's unfair to judge the man on 1 year. But so far, he's done what he can, but he's found that he can't do as much as he hoped because he can't make Congress do anything. If he can actually do it by sort of executive order, then he can do it. And by and large, he's kept the promises he made if he could do it that way. But the promises that require legislation, getting it through Congress, getting it through the Senate, like health care, nada. It just doesn't happen. And he's going to have to rethink how he does business, because if he ends up doing everything by executive order, it's going to look very undemocratic. And if he ends up trying to shove it through Congress, it isn't going to happen. It's not a happy set of choices. So which way is he going to hop? I don't know.
Okay, so I guess one thing people who are watching might be wondering is why should we as Canadians care about what Obama's doing?
Well, we live next to this country that's 10 times as big as we are, and mostly we consume their media, and we have 80% of our trade with them. I mean, there's a few reasons we might be interested. No, but beyond that, the United States is, gradually coming down from being the sole superpower, head, shoulders, and belt buckle above everybody else, to one of the great powers, but it's not all the way down yet, and it really does set the agenda in the world. So it matters what the United States does in the world. I mean, if you look at the train wreck of the last 10 years, sort of wars in places we should never have sent troops, and unilateralism, and the ridiculous war on terror, and all that stuff, an awful lot of it came out of Washington. In fact, most of it did. So, if you want a world that's a little bit more sensible, where people are living rather than dying, you do need change in Washington. And he seemed like change. I still have hope he is change. But he doesn't have the kind of leverage I think most people thought, and it's interesting, if you asked 10 Canadians, 9 of them would say Obama won by a landslide. And he didn't. He would have won by a landslide if we'd had a vote, but he actually barely got 53% of the popular vote. So in the United States, it's trench warfare. He's got to fight everything through one piece at a time. So you mustn't expect miracles there.
Okay. The next thing I just wanted to touch upon is I found it very interesting when you were talking about the G8 to shift to the G20.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what that new dynamic is going to mean for, the international community.
Well, in the long run, it's going to mean a huge amount. Basically, what we've seen in this past year is that the consortium, the coalition of the very big, rich, powerful countries, Europe, North America, Japan, and Russia, who have run the planet collectively for, some 300-odd years, conquered most of it at one time, but even very recently we're still calling all the shots, have had to make room at the board table for the emerging new great powers, the Chinese, the Indians, the Brazilians, South Africans, Turks, Mexicans, what have you. And that's where you go from the G8 to the G20. And it was done with some finesse, I thought, and most people didn't realize quite what had happened because things were moving so fast. But the G8 met, as it meets every year, and they had the photo ops and the conferences and the dinners and all the rest of it, and no doubt some edifying conversations around the fireplace in the evening. And normally speaking, then they go home, but they didn't go home from Italy. Instead, they stayed around, and all the Chinese and Indians and Brazilians, etc., flew in, and they created right there, bang, the G20. And the G20 is the new board. And that's you're going to have to talk to the Chinese and the Indians and the Brazilians and so on before you make decisions, not tell them afterwards. That's a sea change in the way the world is run. I mean, it's millennial almost. Although, right now I can't point to 5 things that have happened since that meeting that would have happened differently if we hadn't had this shift. But over the long run, it's going to show. We don't run the place anymore. We get a share in running the place. We're still major players, but we, the West, we, the industrialized countries, don't run the planet.
Just gonna see if I'm missing something. Oh yes, I mean, obviously you do this for a living, but you obviously also enjoy coming and giving these talks. So what is it you enjoy about it, and why do you, keep going to different communities and, informing them of these important issues?
Well, you're right. I do enjoy talking about it. I mean, more of the questions and answers than the sort of not quite scripted, but the bits of the talk that I've heard a lot of times before. But I think it's important. It's part of the job. Okay, you're a journalist. You get paid for it. You have to. Otherwise, you would have no independence. You wouldn't even have a living. But in addition to that, you have a responsibility to take the information you have access to, which most people don't. They have other jobs, and give them an opportunity to sort of explore what it all means, because it's their world. And I don't do it for free, but I do it, and I enjoy doing it. And I think the people I talk to who come to these sort of events seem pleased to be given the opportunity to talk about things at this level. I mean, it's not. There tends to be a real separation between what people read in the newspapers, which is always kind of dumbed down a bit, and what's going on in the real world, where they're doing the talks, the negotiations, the deals, and so on. And if you can narrow that gap, and that's one of the things I can do, because I go there and then I come here, I think it's satisfying to people. Does it make a difference? Are they going to vote differently? Will we have a different government because of it? Probably not. Although it's a drop in a bucket, and eventually the bucket does have an influence if it gets full. But I enjoy it enough, and I think it's worthwhile enough that I go on doing it. Not all the time.
Okay, I guess the last thing I just wanted to ask you is something I ask all visitors to Timmins, is just what do you think of our city?
It's really cold. No, I've been here before. I think it's a really interesting town. I wish you paid more attention to your heritage. I was quite shocked when they tore down the original newspaper building, for example. I mean, how could you do that? I mean, it's the most historic building in the city. But it's certainly a warm place in personal terms. I mean, people are nice, people are interested, people are hospitable. I'm okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell me tonight?
Name, rank, and serial number. I'm afraid that's